So if you need to move and you're dealing with moving companies, you've probably heard a variety of terms. Local moves, intrastate moves, interstate moves. But knowing the nuances between those types of moves, and in particular how the pricing and regulations can change the way the moving company will work with you, is really, really important to make sure you understand what's going to happen. So let's break down the top 3 differences between local, intrastate, and interstate moves. So let's start with local moves. Any move under 50 miles is generally considered a local move. So when it comes to moving day, in most cases, the crew will be with you for the entire process, and this will include loading and unloading. Now, moving companies that offer local move services can range from companies that only do local moves, strictly local movers, to global van lines, those companies that could move your items across the globe. Now, picking which is best for you and your move, well, that depends primarily on availability and the pricing options. But what if my move is in-state, but is still more than 50 miles away? So if you're moving more than 50 miles away, it might remain in the same category as a same-state move, but we call it an intrastate move. Now the key here is that the distance traveled is typically more than that of local moves, so don't expect to pay the same kind of rates. Intrastate moves can exceed 300 or 400 miles depending on which state you're moving inside of, and with greater distance comes greater cost. Now additionally, some local movers that only do local moves, they may not be able to accommodate that kind of a longer distance move. So make sure to always ask if the company could service your longer move. Now you can compare that to an interstate move, and this involves transportation of goods within the United States. Now this will occur between one place in one state and another in a different state. So for delivery of your shipment, the driver will typically hire a crew for loading, and then once the driver reaches your destination, they'll hire a different crew for unloading. So it's not typically the same people, and that's just because of distance. Pricing. Now, pricing also varies between the different kinds of moves. So let's start with locals. Local moves are charged on an hourly basis, typically. The local move rates will vary depending on the size of the crew. The industry standard is 2 movers and 1 truck. But keep in mind, the more people you have on your move, the faster it will be completed. So by paying for more movers, the job might be accomplished in less time. So if you've got a larger load, especially then, expect to see a larger crew on moving day. Now, though it might be tempting to hire the cheapest local mover via some sort of online ad or maybe even word of mouth, remember that lower costs come at the price of experience, typically speaking. Now, the distances might be short, but quality movers really can make all the difference when you're moving everything you own. Now, let's go to interstate or intrastate moves. Some companies will still charge by the hour and add an additional fee for intrastate, while others will charge by distance and weight. But most longer intrastate moves are charged by the weight of your shipment. It's because it's comparable to going from one state to another. There are not as many regulations, but the distance still can create a significant hurdle. And then there's interstate moving at its core, and there's a common misconception that the price won't go up as much if you're moving across state lines. Say intra and inter are pretty similar, 300-400 miles. Well, you think the price might be the same, but in reality, interstate moving costs are dictated by how much you're moving, how heavy it is, the number of miles that the shipment will travel, and a variety of other small factors that weigh in. That's because pricing for interstate moves is higher than that of moves contained within state lines. There's more complex logistics involved, so keep that in mind when you start shopping for your movers. Now, no matter the distance, there are rules and regulations that companies have to follow, and the difference on which rules they're going to have to follow depends on the kind of moves that they specialize in. For example, a moving company that does only local moves, well, they won't have to register with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. That's because they have to abide by rules made by their own state and those alone. Now, currently, 38 states require that moving companies get a US DOT number, even if they're doing only local moves or intrastate moves. But that's not every state. While most local movers are regulated by state-level governments, you should always still make sure to do your research and request written estimates for local moves. Now, if you live in a state that doesn't require local movers to register with the U.S. Department of Transportation, then make sure you ask what the regulatory processes are. And if they don't know, or if they can't provide accurate information, that might be a red flag. Now, when crossing state lines, this is when things get a lot more complicated. Interstate movers must be assigned a US DOT, Department of Transportation number, that must be registered with the Federal Motor Carrier and Safety Administration. There's a lot of government involvement here. Moving companies that move shipments across state lines must follow guidelines established by the federal government. Now, some of these regulations apply to safety standards for the vehicles and personnel. Others involve the customer and company interaction. But the FMCSA does a lot to protect you, the consumer, but also the movers themselves. Now, the type of move you're going to do greatly impacts how the movers will charge you, the process that the movers will undertake, and the regulations they have to follow. So overall, here's our advice. Make sure to pick a moving company that is first and foremost reputable. Make sure they know and follow standard practices that you'd want to see done during your move. It's just as important to understand what you'll be paying for as how your movers are going to do the job. And in the end, if you have any questions, you can ask us, chat online, send us an email, and we'd be happy to answer any questions to make sure you find the right mover for what you need done.